This podcast is a proud member of the Fan Hub 100. Football without fans is nothing, so we've partnered with Fan Hub to put fans first. Search Fan Hub app to play your part in the journey.
Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast, and it is the last podcast of the season. Of course, the last one we did record was back for the Charlton game that we did lose, and I think Saturday's game against Lincoln, it was the playoff semi-final. That was the second game we've won since we last recorded a podcast. But we did win on Saturday, 2-1 win against Lincoln in the second leg of the playoff semi-final, but we did lose 2-0 in the first leg away at Lincoln, which meant Lincoln do go through to the playoff final with a 3-2 aggregate win. And Danny and John are with me. And Danny, the first thing I want to say before we get into the game, before we get into the season, before we get into anything of that, the one positive you can take from Saturday is the fans were back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's been a long old season, hasn't it? And fortunately, myself and Frankie have obviously been down the stadium week in, week out, covering the games, and just hasn't felt the same with nobody being in there. You know, perhaps 10, 15 maybe directors and a referee assessors just sat below us, but it's been eerie in the stadium. But as you mentioned there, Saturday, just when the lads came out of the tunnel there, that roar that went up, I said it on air, the hairs were up on the back of your neck, and yeah, it was just great to see the fans back in there. And so it was only 10,000, in that stadium, what holds just short of 50. But the noise that came out of it felt like there was a lot more in there, and it was just great to see. And I'm sure the lads as well felt that buzz coming out of the change rooms for the warm up and seeing the fans in there.
Yeah. And how much do you think the players have actually missed that atmosphere this season? Because you've seen when they came out for the first half, they were pressing every single ball, winning the second ball every time, a lot of running, a lot of big tackles going in, and recently, we haven't really seen enough of that, have we?
Well, no. I mean, if you look at it throughout the season, it's got to be quite depressing for lads in a way. Turning up at stadiums, knowing that there's no one in there, it has that almost a feel of a pre-season friendly about it, and you've got to motivate yourself that little bit more, not having the fans in there to get behind you. We've seen at the stadium where the opposition are getting changed. They're coming down the middle of this main stand rather than using change rooms. So it's had a strange feel throughout the season, and then just to, as you say, almost get back to some sort of normality, albeit the last game of the season, what it's turned out to be for us. But yeah, you can say, has it affected the lads? Of course, it will have done. Certainly playing at the Stadium of Light, I think, with having the advantage really with the amount of fans in there getting behind the lads. But if you look at the results throughout the season, we've had a good run, we've had a poor runs as well. So you can assess it in different ways really as well, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. And John, when you're a Sunderland fan, it is always the same. You build up a lot of hope, a lot of things go the right way, and then you get hit down, and that's kind of how it ends. And that is really how Saturday went, wasn't it? The fans were there, the atmosphere was incredible. Came out first half, and I think I said on Twitter that's probably the best first half of football I've seen, possibly even going back to the Chelsea game in the Premier League. But ultimately, we conceded that goal, and whilst we won on the day, it has ended the season, hasn't it?
Yeah, like you say, the game almost sums up, supporting Sunderland. I wasn't, leading up to the game, I wouldn't say nervous or anything like that, because it was sort of like maybe a free hit for those players to show us, show us something. But then again, 12 o'clock Saturday afternoon came, and it was, me and my little one we were bang up for it. And, like I say, first 45 minutes, they had us. We were literally, everything was forgotten. We were on top, and, the performance, I wouldn't have said it was, a 100% performance, but literally they gave everything and pressed. And those, we did actually have Lincoln literally in our pockets. Half time comes, as has been the story of our season. You you do say, don't you, what has Lee Johnson said to him at half time, or, what has he not said? And, we've been outdone. And a lot of people talking about the Lincoln halftime team talk. I'm not sure it was necessarily their team talk. They did a few cute substitutions for them. Maybe we've got to react a little bit better, but we didn't start the second half how we started the first, and that's how we need to build momentum. And it just, second half it just wasn't good enough.
Yeah. And John said it there, Danny, the second half performance compared to the first half was a completely different team. That's been the case a lot this season under Lee Johnson. It's been the case under Phil Parkinson, the case under Jack Ross. Ever since we dropped down at League One, it's always been one poor half or one good half, followed by the complete opposite. What do you think that comes down to? Is it the team talk at half time, or is it the players just, I suppose, just not having the energy to do it for over 90 minutes?
No, I don't think it's that. And you're right. Yeah, you look throughout the course of the season. When have we actually strung together a good solid 90 minutes? Really, you perhaps go back to Lincoln away. Say 80 minutes there. First 10 minutes they could have had a couple of goals on the counter. Portsmouth was perhaps the most complete 90-minute performance we've put in, where we've controlled the game. But as you say, far too often this season, it's been bit part performance where we've had a good 30 minutes in a game, or a 45, as was the case on Saturday, really. And you can't do that. Yes, you expect the opposition to come into a game and have a bit of possession, or, a few attacks. And Lincoln as well, as you mentioned, they couldn't have been as bad second half as they were in that first half. And as I was watching it Saturday, going back to the fans as well, people say, do they give the players a lift? But at the same time, the players have to give the fans that lift and something to go off. And that's what they did at the weekend. From the first whistle, we pressed them. It wasn't so much the great flowing football that got us that performance in the first 45 minutes. It was just the energy, the work rate, pressing, picking up second balls. And Lincoln, I was sat not far behind the dugout, and Rodgers was obviously playing just in front of me, and George Grant a couple of times, and they're almost waving their hands around, not sure what they were doing, and they looked like they'd gone, going in there. By the time they were coming into our half, we were taking the ball off them. It was almost attack v defence, wasn't it, for that first 45 minutes? And half-time, almost in a way, came at the wrong time for us, and it gets them the opportunity to go in. Michael Appleton to regroup. No doubt he got stuck into one or two of them. And obviously, as you mentioned there, made a couple of changes. He brought McCrandles came on, and they made a change at the back. Monsma went off, didn't he, for Walsh, the centre half. But yeah. McCrandles had an effect on the game. He was the one who won the penalty. Yes, they missed it, but he was driving forward from midfield, which they didn't have in the first half. And he had a chance as well late on, didn't he, where he chopped Max Power on the edge of the box and just fired it over the top. So, yes, you can say whether it's team talk or whatever had an effect on them. But from Lee Johnson's point of view, for me, he doesn't have to say a lot at half-time. The lads know what's at stake. We'd let ourselves down in the first leg by coming back to the stadium at like 2-0 down. So we knew what the task was, and we'd almost took care of that in the first 45 minutes. And then it becomes a 45-minute game, doesn't it then? And, unfortunately, we went out there and we lost that 45-minute game 1-0 in the second half.
Yeah.
You're looking at chances in the first half. You go back to, obviously, Charlie White's when it's 1-0 and he goes round the keeper. He could have rolled it across to Chris Maguire for a tap-in. Looking back now, I'm sure he thinks he wishes he took that option, but he tried to just dink it past the last defender who, obviously got in the way on the line. Could have had a penalty with Ross Stewart. I think it was. I've seen it back now, and I think the keeper doesn't get any of the ball. And there's not a lot of there is contact on Ross Stewart, which for me, it's one of those again where it comes back to anywhere outside the box, the referee gives a free kick. Whereas
exactly
in the box,
like you did as well 2 minutes later, he literally gave a free kick.
Yes, exactly that. So, yeah, you can look at that. And then, obviously, Lincoln did come stronger into the second half. They had one or two opportunities to put the game to bed. Once they missed that penalty, the roar went up with the crowd, and then you think, right, lads, let's get back to it. We still had half an hour then, I think, to go out and get, to try and get a goal and to take it to penalties. But unfortunately, McGeady's chance comes back off the post. Charlie fires it into the side netting, and then other than that, really, we didn't really have too many opportunities. But no, it was disappointing after the first 45 minutes where you're clinging on to that hope. Myself as well, I thought we've got them here. Worst case now we've got penalties, but as you mentioned, Sunderland don't do things too easy, do they? And unfortunately, it wasn't to be.
Yeah. And John, you look at the game, you look at the chances we've had, and a lot was made of that Charlie White miss prior to his actual goal. And people say, if he scores that, you win the game. But football just doesn't pan out like that, does it? Like I said to Danny before we started recording, if Charlie White scores that goal, the chance for the second goal doesn't even come along. The game pans out completely differently. Lincoln's mentality changes. The atmosphere is different. But Sunderland really did have a lot of chances to see that game out in the first half alone, really, didn't they?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and you can look at where their goal comes from. Their man's had a free header in the box, and it's another maybe a black mark against Charlie White's performance. Just pick your man up, track him. If we do that, like Danny says, we go to penalties, and on Wednesday night after the final whistle, we'd have probably took penalties. But yeah, and again, those chances, Charlie White's got he's going to be full of confidence with that. The chance that he misses, in hindsight, we could say he should have rolled it, but he doesn't even look at Maguire. He's going for goal and he's one-dimensional. Ultimately, it's one of those ones that probably has cost us. You would have thought when they missed a penalty, it would wake us up, and it maybe did for probably a 5-10 minute spell. But after that, we seem to just regress into the team that we are. We looked nervous, we looked edgy, and the substitutions from Johnson didn't help or didn't affect, not really in any way. We weren't proactive. We weren't sort of trying to nullify them maybe and hold on. And yeah, it just didn't go our way at all. And like you say, it just sums up the whole season. We've had good bits, we've had bad bits, but it hasn't just been a consistent run. And the only game that I can remember top of my head for a full 90 minutes performance is Portsmouth. And if you want to get promoted, playoffs or not, there has to be a lot more of them, and there isn't. So now this summer coming, a lot of questions to be asked of everyone on the playing staff, including the manager.
Yeah, and John's just mentioned it there briefly, Danny. The substitutions that Johnson made. We'll get on to the team selections as well over the two legs, but the one substitution that I suppose annoyed me the most, and one that I just don't understand, was 93rd minute, Lyndon Gooch. I'm not sure if he picked up a knock or not, but he's went off, and he's replaced by Tom Flanagan in a game that you're losing. You've got 2 minutes left to save your season, and we will get on to a little bit later on, but potentially save your job as well if you lead Johnson, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen with that. But what's the thinking with taking Gooch off, who's a very direct player, likes to get across in the box, likes to beat the man, replace him with a centre back?
Yeah, I think with 92 minutes on the clock, the time's running out. You've got a couple of minutes left, and I was thinking you may as well take one of the back lads off. We still had the back four in. Take one of the lads off, and then when I seen Tom Flanagan coming on, I thought, all right, we're just going to chuck him up top. He's 6'4".
Yeah.
Go direct now. Try and if he gets his head on the end of something or a knockdown, as we've seen for Aiden's chance, really, wasn't it? Where White's knocked it down, something similar to that. Chuck him up top and then see what can happen. They'd obviously dropped off. They were hanging on really last few minutes. We were just getting balls, weren't we, and chucking it forward. But yeah, to bring him on maybe and just to make it almost a straight swap for Lyndon Gooch at left back was perhaps a little bit strange. But we'd used that he was the fifth sub, and the four previously, as John's just mentioned, where their subs, McCrandall's perhaps had the biggest impact coming off the bench. I don't think our subs came on and affected the game enough. I think Jack Diamond struggled to get into the game on the right-hand side. He came on 65 minutes. He had 25 minutes to get into the game. Didn't have too much joy beating his man over on the far side, did he? So that's what you're hoping, what your bench can come on and affect the game. And unfortunately, it just didn't happen for us at the weekend.
Yeah. And John, going back to the first leg, obviously the goals that we conceded weren't good goals from Lincoln's point of view. It was mistakes at the back from Sunderland. Obviously, the first goal, deflected ball, Flanagan's left it to tap into the back, and then the second goal, you can put your blame on whoever you want, but Flanagan's passed it back to Burge, perhaps a little bit short, and then Burge has just blasted it straight off their attacker. And it's 2-0. The game finished 2-0 in the first leg, and from that point on, I think there was a stat on Sky that only one team have ever won a semi-final when they were 2-0 down in the first leg, so it was always going to be a difficult task. But did the team selection in a way in that first leg almost cost Lee Johnson over the two legs? Like I say, playing Tom Flanagan, which at the time I didn't really agree with. He hasn't played too much football, and to me, he's a defender that always looks to have a mistake in him. And arguably he's cost us the 2 goals in the away leg. But how much has that first leg actually cost us when you think of how good the performance was in the second leg?
Yeah, I think it's cost us massively. We've left ourselves with a massive task to overturn that type of deficit. But we've been saying it for all season now. It's too easy for teams to to score against us. Far too easy. There was a time, earlier on in the season, we were solid, and Lee Burge wasn't even having to make a save, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're teams don't have to do. Teams can come up to the stadium line, have one shot, score, and go away with a 1-0 win, and it's like that's not. Again, it's another thing that's not going to get you out of the league. We need to be solid first and foremost, and that first game, it's not like we were really compact and trying to be hard to beat, and they've got two. They've managed to get two worldies in. You go, fair enough, but it's not. The goals are just too easy. We're very naive still. Like the whole team's just got a lot to learn. When are they going to learn? But the formation, me and Danny spoke midweek about it. Like far too narrow. There was no width, and we slowed down our own attacks. Lincoln probably thought, don't go near them, boys. Just let them play, because they'll fizzle out their own. There was no, when we played Lincoln away, Diamond absolutely tore them to shreds. On the break, and that was in the first 45 minutes because he had to be substituted because he was on a booking. And then we go there Wednesday. Maybe you've got to draw on that and how we thought we could play. And he plays the stupid 4-2-2, the narrow formation with no real width. We've got two wingers, in Jones and McGeady, who can beat their man and get their crosses in, as we saw with McGeady Saturday. And you've got White, who is not going to be a player who you're going to play the ball through and he's going to beat two men and score. He needs just one-touch finishes, balls into the box when he did score. And we didn't do any of that. It's naivety even from Johnson for me. And like you say, the first leg has killed us. We left ourselves a mountain to climb. We just about had it, but I still think that we let ourselves down, in the second half. If Charlie White marks his man in the box, maybe we take another chance, or we get to penalties and then it's a lottery. But again, I think it's our own undoing, and it just wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Well, just briefly looking at the team that did start the second leg, I think there was a few changes made. Obviously, Lee Burge started in goal. Lyndon Gooch came in at right back. Of course, Sunderland were chasing the game. They need 2 goals at the very minimum, just to see through the extra time, potentially penalties. So Lyndon Gooch started at right back, and Beanie Wright and O'Nien back in central of defence. Tom Flanagan back on the bench. Callum McFadzean at left back. Obviously, Denver Hume went off in the first 10-15 minutes against Lincoln in the first leg with an injury. Josh Scowen, Grant Ledbetter, Chris Maguire, who a lot of people wanted to start, and he did. Aidan McGeady, Ross Stewart, and Charlie White. And Danny, in terms of the team selection on Saturday, I don't think you can really blame Johnson at all. I think he got most of it right. Obviously, there's a few forced changes there. Obviously, Denver Hume is our best left back. He is injured, so McFadzean kind of had to play there. Tom Flanagan, after the performance that he put in on Wednesday, I don't think it's too much of a surprise to say he was dropped. But realistically, the team selection that he put out there starting, you wouldn't have changed at all, would you? Potentially Winchester.
Now you go back to it, as you say, on the first leg there, and John mentioned it, and with Flanagan coming back in, and I know you question whether he was fully match fit, as I think his last game was in the final, the Papa John's final, wasn't it, where he went off injured. So he hasn't played a lot of football since. Is it a gamble? Possibly. He's trained a lot, but it's never the same as obviously getting game time minutes into your legs. I actually thought first off he done quite well down at Lincoln. It was just, and I don't even think it was a fitness issue to do with the goals really. The first one, it's a decision. I just think he's unaware that the men are in behind him. Obviously we've had 2 efforts at clearing it, which weren't great to be honest, and it's come back in, deflected shot from Grant, and I think he just thinks it's going between him and Lee Burge out for a goal kick, and then obviously looking back now he's just got to put his right foot through that and clear it. So that's a decision thing, nothing to do with fitness. And the second one, I know people have questioned the back pass if he's underhit. I don't think he can put any more weight on it for the distance he is, and I just think Lee Burge is perhaps seeing the picture. He can see that Brennan Johnson's closing him down, and just put it out for a throw into the left side for me, and then argue about it later on. So again, the goals we've conceded in the tie are poor. Then you move on to the one on Saturday. We had a warning sign with Regan Poole hit the bar with the header. I think he got free of Luke O'Nien for that one, and it come off the angle of the bar, didn't it? So that was a warning sign. And then a couple of minutes later, as you say, that's been our undoing. I think you go back to recent times where we've been solid. John said there, we've been solid. Lee Burge hasn't had a lot of saves to make. Then since we've been on the bad run, go back to Wigan for me. The goals we conceded at Wigan, set plays, lads not doing their jobs. So you can do all the organisation you want, but at the end of the day, you've got your man, and if you lose your man, he gets free. It's an individual error, isn't it? And that's what's cost us. So the 3 goals they have scored over the course of the 180 minutes have been bitterly disappointing. I mean, don't get me wrong, they will look at the goals we've scored and Aidan McGeady's put balls in, so they're probably questioning where their centre halves in terms of picking up. You can always debrief goals and pick the bones out of it. And then obviously, you change it at the weekend. You put Luke O'Nien comes back in alongside Bailey. I thought Luke O'Nien played well at the weekend, if I'm honest, at centre half. Yeah. They had the 1 second half where they both went for the same ball, didn't they? And the lad went through. I think that was all McCrandles, wasn't it, where he put it over the crossbar. But apart from that, we weren't too bad at the back at the weekend. I don't think it was just that creativity. Second half for me, what we just don't have through the middle of the park really. I thought Grant done well in terms of controlling the game for us, but it's that next level of going from the halfway line to the opposition's 18-yard box, which has been the case all season, trying to play through lines, clever little balls in, which we haven't really got, which is where we rely on the likes of Aidan McGeady out wide, Diamond, Gooch, whoever's playing on the other side, service in the box for Charlie White. And that's what we've seen for the 2 goals at the weekend, which was where we had a chat with John earlier in the week, where we were actually set up in a 4-3-3. But for me, Aidan McGeady was coming far too narrow. Jordan Jones was coming too narrow. And we had no width whatsoever going forward at Lincoln. We had to come back out, build again, and then it obviously gave Lincoln the opportunity to get back into their shape and formation, and that's why we found it difficult to create chances at their place.
Yeah. Well, look, quickly go through the player ratings from the game on Saturday and Saturday alone, and there's a few more things we'll be able to touch on. So Lee Burge starting goal, made the penalty save. In terms of the goal, is there much he can do with it? Probably not. I haven't actually watched it back. I don't know whether he can come off his line a little bit quicker, come and collect it. But went with a 7 for Burge. John, I'll start with you.
Yes, probably same 7. Great penalty save that should have set us up to go on, but not to be. But yeah, he did all right. Couldn't do anything with the goal either.
Yeah, and Danny, for you?
Yeah. I won't give rating marks, mate, but I'll give it an opinion on the players. But no, I don't think he could have come. I've watched it back, and a few people have said could he have come for it. Although it is an in-swinger, and the lad heads it sort of 6 yards out, but it's the pace on the delivery really. I don't think he can do much. I don't think Charlie White just takes a yard too far, gets under the flight of the ball, doesn't he? And Hopper comes off the back of him. Apart from that, good penalty save. He smothered one late on as well. I think the keeper hit a quick free kick out to that far side, didn't he? Where was it? Lad ran in behind. I think it was Rogers. Was it got in behind Max Power on that far side, and he made a good save. So yeah, I thought he had a steady game at the weekend, Lee Burge, to be fair.
Yeah. Lyndon Gooch obviously started right back, an attacking change. Obviously, we are used to seeing Max Power play there, potentially Conor McLaughlin. Obviously, McLaughlin was injured. Power was on the bench, but Lyndon Gooch started. He got up and down the wing a lot, put some decent balls in the box, and I don't think he had a bad game at all. There was a few times he lost the ball, and obviously second half, you could see he was starting to tire. He lost the ball a bit more, and eventually was subbed off. But I went with a 6 for Gooch, John.
Yeah, same. The main times I noticed him is when he just couldn't get round his man.
Yeah.
Just thought run the mill 6.
Yeah. And Danny's
Yeah, difficult for Lyndon Gooch. I think, just having a look yesterday, actually, I think he's played 5 different positions in them 2 playoff games. I think at their place, he started in one of the 8 sort of attacking midfield roles. Then he went out to right wing. Then he ended up at right back there. So he played 3 positions there. And then at the weekend, as you say, doing a job at right back. And yeah, he was up against Rogers. I think he'd done well enough defensively. A couple of times he was trying to run Rogers, didn't get the better of him. But, with Lyndon Gooch, what I like about him is his work rate and his effort. And he puts the right shift in, doesn't he? Wherever he's asked to play by the manager, he'll go and do it. And then gets moved to left back to finish it off before he came off for the last couple of minutes of the game. So
Bailey White and Luke O'Nien started in central of defence. So we'll start with Bailey White, who I thought again in the first half, Lincoln just didn't really have any of the ball. We were very quick to close them down, press the ball. I thought Bailey White and O'Nien brought the ball out very well from the back, especially in the first half. There was a few mistakes in the second half, but ultimately, I don't think he was to blame for us not qualifying, I suppose. Obviously, you look back at the first leg. Can he score that header from the corner? Does that completely change the game? I suppose it does, but it's all ifs and buts. But for Bailey White on Saturday, I went with a 7, John.
I'll probably go with 6. Again, he's probably one of the ones I only really noticed maybe the bad things that he did. He's got to score. I think in the first leg, he's got to score as well. And then, when we lost the ball, it goes over the top and he tries to, him and O'Nien go for it. They've been playing centre-back for a while together now. They should know that sort of thing. And he's this experienced, Rolls Royce of a defender that, we're supposed to be expecting. And he's doing stuff like that. So, yeah, I've gone for 6. I wasn't that impressed.
Yeah. And Danny, he didn't really do anything wrong in the game, did he?
No, I think it's the first leg. Yeah, the header off the corner. It's one of those where you see the flight of it, and he's got good connection on, hasn't he? Keeper's beat. Just 5-6 inches lower. It's in the back of the net. So yeah, it's disappointing that he hasn't put it away. But second leg Saturday didn't have to do a lot of defending first half. It was just a case of recycling the ball, giving it to the likes of Grant to take the play further up the pitch, and then second half. Just that one incident, really. What I remember, as you say there, I think it's Luke's. To be honest, I think Luke's left centre half, and it's more left side. So I think he's got to leave Luke, just drop off and pick up the bits if Luke doesn't win it. Obviously, they both go for the same ball. McRandles gets through, chops Max Power, and thankfully puts it. Well, say thankfully, it didn't count for anything in the end, did it? But fired it over the crossbar. But apart from that, he didn't have a lot of defending to do at the weekend, no.
Yeah. And again, Luke O'Nien, I went with 7. I thought he was better than Bailey Wright, but I don't think he was too much better. And I like O'Nien, especially as centre half, because he is comfortable bringing the ball out. And I think Sunderland in League One do have a lot of possession, and I think there's plenty of times this season where the defenders had the ball. Obviously, a lot of the teams that we do play against, like the sit back, there's a lot of space, and we kind of seem to play a 5-yard pass instead of just going forward with the ball 5 yards and then making the pass, getting us higher up the pitch quicker. But I thought O'Nien did that quite well on Saturday. There was a few balls he got in the box. But again, he's not a centre half, so his positional awareness at times did let him down. But again, 7 for me, John.
Yeah, probably the same. I've gone for 7. I've seen a few people criticising his long balls, but I think, with the 2 big men up top, I think that was the plan. So you can't really criticise if that's the tactic that the manager's asked you, because I thought his, left and right distribution up top wasn't too bad. So yeah, I'll give him a 7.
Yeah, and Danny?
Yeah, I think overall he was steady at the weekend. I think if you look at our best partnership as a centre half pair, it's probably been him and Dion Sanderson when we were on that good run. A lot of clean sheets. Yes, he's not a centre half, but of course he's going to get caught out. Natural centre halves get caught out of position at times, and there's 1 or 2 occasions where he's tried to open up, fish round the man for the ball, and he's been rolled. But yeah, that comes to other centre halves as well, trying to do that. But I think at the weekend his control on the game, he's reading it quite well. Did force it a little bit second half, shelling them balls, but we stopped playing. We still had a lot of time to get back into the game. I felt we could have maybe played through midfield a little bit more in that second half. But again, as you say there, if he's being asked to throw balls forward, looking for Stewart and Wyke in there and get the knockdowns, then he done that on several occasions in that second half. And just the one where Regan Poole really defensively, as I say, the one with Bailey Wright where they both went up for the same ball, but off the corner where they hit the bar, he was with Regan Poole, and he just lost him there, and it came back off the bar. But apart from that, I thought he was quite good at the weekend, Luke O'Nien.
Yeah. Moving on to left back, Callum McFadden started. Obviously, Denver Hume, as I mentioned, he got injured in the first leg. Not sure how serious that is. Hopefully not too serious, although he is out of contract in the summer. Whether he gets a new contract or not, I'm not sure. But again, that is something we will touch on shortly. But Jake Vogans, I think he's played 2 or 3 games this season. He obviously had that health scare that kind of kept him out for a while, but we haven't seen him since. So Callum McFadden, realistically, was the only option to play at left back. And I thought in the first half, I don't think he did anything wrong. Obviously, he was up against Brennan Johnson, who is a very good footballer, and I think he's on loan form. I think it's Nottingham Forest, I think it is, and he's certainly not a player that I would be against us signing on loan next season. But ultimately, I don't think McFadden did too much wrong yesterday, John. Yesterday on Saturday, John. Give him a 6.
Yeah, I'll go for 6. I didn't think he didn't really do too much wrong. Put his body on the line. We know, his ability, is fairly limited, but I didn't really notice him. But he was getting his body stuck in, so you can't really ask for more.
Yeah, and Danny, he did his job, really, didn't he?
Well, he did. Yeah, he just had the one early on, right, first couple of minutes in the game, didn't he? Where he played a poor square pass, and I think he played it to, it might have been Johnson or Rogers, I'm not sure, and they fired a chance past the post. Didn't really, obviously he was on the opposite side of the ground, so he didn't notice him getting involved too much with McGeady. Didn't really service the box too much, and then obviously second half he got injured, didn't he? Where he picked it up around the halfway line and was like running across the pitch with it. Went through 1 or 2 tackles, and the centre half made a good strong tackle on him, and I think he ended up getting injured, and he came off around the 60-65 minute mark. But it's just an average performance, really, I'd say. Didn't notice him too much in either thing. Defensively, second half, they got at him a little bit down their right-hand side. I think Aidan McGeady didn't track Regan Poole back as much as he could have done to help him out, and they sort of doubled up down his side. got away with one. Let's say got away with one. He slid, didn't he? Where I think it was Brendan Johnson actually got booked looking for the penalty.
Yeah.
So yeah, but apart from that, yeah, didn't notice a lot good or a lot bad really from McFadzean at the weekend.
Yeah. Moving on to midfield, obviously Josh Scowen did start, and again it was a game of two halves. Excellent first half, average second half, and I think Scowen kind of fit into that category as well. I thought the first half was probably the best half I've seen him play for Sunderland. You know, he closed everything down. He was carrying the ball forward a lot more than he usually does, with a lot more control than he usually does as well. But again, the second half, we didn't press with the intensity that we did in the first, and I think that's one of the attributes that Scowen does bring. So when he's not pressing hard, does he offer too much in midfield? I'm not too sure. But overall, on the balance of the game, went with 7, John.
I'll go over 6 because the tackle for the penalty just infuriated me. There's no need for him to just go absolutely flying in there, unless you're certain you're going to take the ball. So that frustrated me. But yeah, he's first half very good for the way we were playing. The second half, didn't really see anything, and probably sums up his Sunderland career so far.
Yeah, and he is one of them players, Danny, that does split opinion. Some people like him, some people don't. But I think everyone was kind of on the same side on Saturday, and especially in the first half, couldn't really ask for more from him, could you?
No, I thought he done well Saturday, and you're right. He does sort of divide opinion. I think if you're looking for energy in the middle of the park, he does give you that. He can get about the pitch and he goes pressing. Saturday, as you mentioned there, I did think he carried the ball quite well alongside Grant. He was picking her up on the half turn and driving 10, 15 yards and giving the ball easy. And that's all he has to do really for me when he's in the team. But what lets him down for me is the amount of fouls he gives away in a game. I think he gave 5 or 6 away at the weekend prior to giving the one for the penalty, and then I could see, as you see that happening, the ball gets played in McFadzean. He does well. He's tracked the run. He's getting back in there, helping out defensively. Just needs to put the brakes on. The man's going nowhere, really. Yes, say McRandall's, he does a little Cruyff turn, but if Josh just puts the brakes on there, but he leaves a foot in, and that's what he's got to cut out of his game. And I say, obviously, they missed the penalty, but it's just those fouls, which for me, he's given away far too often this season. But no, I think it was one of his better games overall at the weekend in terms of the energy he brought to the team, especially in the pressing department, which is what we needed at the weekend, that first 45 minutes.
Yeah. And Glenn Ledbetter started alongside him, and I think he was a player that we did miss on Wednesday. I think he's important in a sense that a lot of people don't see. He's very good at recycling the ball. He'll calm the team down, and he is a leader in that team. And I think in the first half he did show that with some neat balls, albeit backwards, sideways, just control the possession. But again, second half didn't really have too much impact on the game. So again, I've went with over the balance of the game. I'd probably go with a 6. First half, I'd have went with a 7, but I'll go with a 6. John?
Yeah, same. I'll go with a 6. First half, obviously did what he needed to do, and then second half, obviously the onus was on Lincoln to, and they did the business on us, to be fair, and we didn't see Ledbetter, really put his stamp on the game in any way on the second half. So yeah, 6 and a little bit flat.
Yeah, and you see what he did on Saturday, Danny. Do you think he is a player that we did miss on Wednesday when we kind of didn't have any control in midfield, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a strange one really, because if you go back to the first leg, we played a 3 in midfield, and I'd always personally play Grant at the base of the midfield 3. Have him sat in there, as John's mentioned, he gives you control. He can see a pass, he calms things down. But at League One level, it's quite frantic, isn't it? And I'd always have him in there, and then put some energy in front of him. If you've got legs in front of him, whether it's Scowen, Winchester, 09, Max Power, whoever, I'd always play Grant. So we went from playing a 3 there to a standard sort of 4-4-2 at the weekend with a 2-man midfield. But in that first half, he controlled the game. Lincoln sat back. He was taking the ball off the 2 centre halves. Lincoln play up. He mixed it up for me, as you say there. He did go square and sideways, but sometimes he was throwing a few balls over the top, which then obviously forces Lincoln to drop back. I've been there as a centre half, and if you're getting balls thrown over your head, naturally you drop back 10, 15 yards because you get sick of continuously having to run back towards your own goal, and that sort of opened it up then for him to play some balls into Maguire, into McGeady coming off the line and that sort of things. And then second half, yes, we went a lot more direct, didn't we? And you're missing Grant out then, really. And almost the game sort of a little bit did go on around him, really. He was picking balls up, got a few tackles in. We went flying in on a couple of occasions. You can see what it meant to him. And I spoke to him after the game. He was devastated. When we spoke to him on the podcast earlier in the season, he said he feels like he's got unfinished business with not getting this club previously back into the championship. And he'll have been devastated after the game there on Saturday.
Yeah. And John, will obviously get onto it shortly, but obviously Grant Ledbetter again is one of them players out of contract. He is towards the end of his career. He certainly is. But would I offer him a contract as a player? Possibly not. But I think he is an important player to keep around the club because he gets the club. It's his boyhood club, and you see the video at the end. I think you could see it in Lee Johnson's interview after the game as well. He went out on the pitch. There's no one in the stadium. He's just kind of looking around, and you can tell how much it means to him. And that's something I don't think we have enough of in the squad this season, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, I'm not sure I'd give him a new playing deal. Different if we've got some real reinforcements in, and he's part of, he's part of the squad who we maybe look upon, just here and there for the last sort of 10 minutes of games. But it's a massive overhaul of the squad, and I'm not sure I'd want him. I don't want to say near the squad, but I don't want him to be, can have to be considered if we get one injury in midfield, then he has to play. I don't want it to be like that. I think we should move on from that type of thing. But having him around the club, that's your sort of your Kevin Ball levels for me. Even if he's working with, the under 23s or just having him in some sort of capacity at the club as, with almost a voice, so we can get that message over of what it means, because we've had plenty of players here who say they get it, but you never really tell, can you? But players like that around the place will definitely, especially inspire the young ones, and we've got a good crop of young ones at the minute, and we need them to flourish, and they need to know what it's like to play for this club, and Grant Ledbetter is the sort of player who will make sure that's ingrained in him as would your Kevin Balls and those type of players.
Yeah, and we'll quickly go through the last four players. Obviously, Chris Maguire, he's a player that hasn't really played too much under Lee Johnson this season. Kind of similar to McGeady under Parkinson. No one really knew why he wasn't playing. But in the games that he has played, he's made a big difference. Obviously, he didn't do too much on Saturday. You look at the Wyke chance. Could he have squared it at Maguire? Open goal, 2-0 at the time, probably. But, I mean, even at the time when I was watching the game, I didn't even see Maguire there. So, if you're Charlie Wyke in that position, you're in a semi-final, there's 10,000 fans warming you on. Are you really going to pass that? Probably not. But Chris Maguire, I don't think he did too much on Saturday. He did a lot of running, a lot of recycling the ball, but I don't think he did anything of note, really. So I went with 6, John.
Yeah, same for me. Like you say, recycling the ball and keeping the ball, but ultimately that's not what is in the team to do. We've got centre backs and the central midfielders who can do that. With him, we need a bit of magic. Maybe it was a little bit too much to expect. A bit of magic to come up, because we know how hit and miss he can be. Normally, when he's been out for a few games, we normally get that reaction. But it's just one of them. It's just how his career's gone. Everyone can clamour, myself included, for him to be included. But if he's not going to show up, it's sort of, it's a bit of hindsight. But it's, it didn't really work, and he was substituted, and it was a bit like, oh, okay, it's probably last we've seen of him. Anything I would say is maybe Charlie doesn't hear Chris Maguire screaming because of how loud the fans were. Because you can see on the video that Chris Maguire is clearly screaming for it. But as we said earlier, Charlie Wyke's not going to pass there, is he? And has maybe robbed Chris Maguire of a little bit of a final sort of hero status almost.
Yeah. And Danny, for you, like I say, we know what Maguire's capable of. You see some of the goals he scored this season, just in general in our time in League One, some of the things that he's done. He didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't really have too much impact on the game offensively, did he?
No, he'd been frustrated, Chris Maguire. Yeah, you can see that the fans have been asking for him. He didn't get on in the first leg, did he? Similar to what McGeady was with Phil Parkinson, as you mentioned there. He's found it difficult for game time. When he has come on in recent weeks, he has affected game. Go back to the Crew game where he got his equaliser. He's put some set plays in. I think Max Power scored a header. I can't remember who it was against earlier on. in the season when he's come off the bench. And so he's always got that ability, Chris, hasn't he? Whether it's from set plays or just that little bit of cleverness in and around the box at times. But yeah, we didn't really see it at the weekend. I felt at times with him playing out on the right, he did come a little bit narrow, where Lincoln were obviously deep and compact. It was difficult to get him on the ball in the pocket. And then for me, he's leaving a bit of space. I can see maybe if they've worked on it to come now and leave some room for Lyndon Gooch to come on the outside, but Roger's done quite well up against Lyndon Gooch. So we didn't get a lot of joy down the right-hand side, especially in the first half. And then, as you say, going into the second half, we didn't start the second half well at all, did we? You could sense Lincoln coming into the game for that 10, 15 minutes. And then he got brought off for Jack Diamond. You can see where Lee Johnson's tried to mix it up with Jack with his pace to bring him on for Chris on that far right-hand side. But again, with Jack struggled to get into the game when he came on as well. I thought he done quite well up against him at left back for them. So disappointing for Chris. As you mentioned, whether he's going to get another contract, it's highly unlikely. If you're going off his time under Lee Johnson. So yeah, it probably is the last we've seen of Chris in a Sunderland shirt. But I think over the course of his contract, his time at the club, I think he'll be, himself, he'll have done a reasonable job for the club, and he'll be looking for pastures new, I'd imagine, in the summer.
Yeah. And on the other side was Aidan McGeady, and he's a player that we always talk about on the podcast that we do. He's always talked about on Twitter. He's talked about anywhere in Sunderland because of just the impact that he has on this team. Every season we've been in League One, he's been one of our most important players. And again, on Saturday, he certainly showed that. He's got the 2 assists, put some great balls into the box, obviously the one for Stewart and then the one for Wyke. 2 carbon copy balls, really. And then obviously he's hit the post in the second half. I don't really think there's too much else you can do with that. It's kind of a hit and hope. But overall, I thought McGeady was one of our better players, if not our best player on the day. So I went with an 8 for McGeady, John.
Yeah, same. Yeah, you summed it all up. We know what he's about. It's nice to see him get past his man and get them early crosses in, and our strikers actually anticipating and getting across their man as well. So yeah, he played really well. Who knows if we're gonna see him again? But this season he's been outstanding, and a few people have criticised and said, maybe we look a little bit better with him out the team, sort of on like balance wise. But we'd be nowhere near the playoffs if it weren't for him. So yeah, fairly good performance from him. Yeah, 8.
Yeah, and Danny, there was a lot made about it on Twitter, and I'm sure you've probably seen it elsewhere as well, about the contract situation with McGeady going into the game. Yeah. It was alleged that if he started another game, he had an automatic extension of his contract. I'm not entirely sure what happened to that. I'm not sure if you know yourself, but he showed on Saturday why he just had to start, didn't he?
Yeah, for me, as John's mentioned there, we'd perhaps be struggling to get into the playoffs maybe without his creativity over on that left-hand side. The amount of, I think that was that 17 assists if you include the weekend over the course of the season, where he didn't play in the first 15 games or so, did he? So you see what he brings to the table, Aidan. I think people will talk about his age now. He's 35, but for me, he's a starter. And again, I don't know the ins and outs of what's going on with his contract, but I'd certainly be looking to give him another year at this level. Whether he starts every week or not, I know he looks a fit lad. He's one of those who looks like he looks after himself as much as he can. He looks like he enjoys training as well, and you can see what it means to him to still be out on a pitch, and he wants the club to do well while he's here. He's been here, is it 3 years now? I think he's desperate to get the club promoted as well. So yeah, it's disappointing, but as I say, I like watching him. He's a nightmare for defenders. You ask any right back in League One if they enjoy seeing that team sheet come in and knowing they're up against Aidan McGeady. There's not too many who'll fancy getting 1v1 against him around the corner of the 18-yard box. He's still got quick feet, hasn't he? Still got that little burst of pace, as we've seen at the weekend for the 2 assists. So I thought it was a pretty decent display, and just a shame the one that dropped to him late on there. It hasn't just nestled another 5 or 6 inches inside that left-hand side post and got us the goal, which would have took it to penalties.
Yeah. Moving on to the front 2, Ross Stewart started. I don't think too many people saw it coming, but again, based on the first 45 minutes and realistically the whole time he was on the pitch, he certainly justified that selection. He was pressing every single ball, a lot of intensity, and obviously got his reward with the opening goal as well. So again, I went with an 8 out of 10 for Stewart, John.
Yeah, same. Probably one of the shining lights, and going into next season is maybe, we've got him on a permanent deal. If Wyke does go, yeah, I thought he was really good. I thought his hold-up play was spot on. Got his goal, which would have given him a massive confidence boost. And led the line really well a few weeks ago down at Plymouth. And then was maybe a little bit unlucky to not play the following games. But yeah, I thought he was decent all round. Yeah.
Yeah, and Danny Field, like I say, pressed every ball. He showed that he wanted to play and got his goal, got his reward, and that's all you can really ask for a striker in this league, isn't it?
Yeah, he done well, I thought, at the weekend, especially as you say in that first 45 minutes, going back to the Plymouth, where it was his first start, scored a good goal down there, took it well. I think he hit the bar as well with a header down there, didn't he? And I think once he gets up ahead of steam, he can run as well. Play with balls coming into him wasn't too bad, his touch and that, so he does look like he's got something. And then, as you say, at the weekend there, he, good movement for his goal, got across his man, nice finish, got us on our way. Unlucky not to win the penalty when the keeper came out. I thought he clipped him, the goalkeeper. That was a penalty for me. And then maybe just a little bit disappointed he came off when he did. 12, 15 minutes left on the clock, and Lee Johnson's looking to change it up. I get that, but maybe he would have been disappointed if you're leaving him and Wyke up there. Two big lads, and then getting more balls into the box. As we said before, you're looking for something to drop in and around there. But no, I thought overall the weekend he was one of our best players yet.
Yeah. And moving on to the last player in the starting 11, Charlie Wyke. Obviously, I think it's 31 goals he got for the season. He got himself another one on Saturday. But that wasn't the whole story, because you look at the chances that he's had. Like I say, the chance that he had when Chris Maguire was open. For me, if he's shooting, he's got to score. There's obviously a simple pass on there. Do you see it at the time? Probably not. But there's a chance there. There's the chance in the second half. I think McGeady's hit the post. It's come back out to Wyke. I think the keeper's on the floor. And he's dragged it into side netting again. Another big chance, and if we score that goal, as you see with the penalty save that we got, it gives the crowd a boost, gives the players a boost, and who knows where it can lead to that. If Charlie Wyke gets that, I think it would have levelled the game at the time. And like Danny's mentioned a couple of times now, you potentially go on to win the game, take it to penalties, and who knows what happens after that. But based on the whole game, I don't think you did too badly. There was them chances that I've mentioned, but overall, I'm at 6, John.
Yeah, I'll probably go. Yeah, I might be really harsh here and just go over 5, because I think the two key moments in the game are him, obviously not putting that chance, not putting that chance away, and then you've got to track your man, especially in the middle of the 6-yard box. Different if the guy's on the edge of the box, you maybe just lose him, but literally in the middle of your own box, and that literally just killed us. And for that, I think that's. There's talk of him having an injury of this or injury of that, but I didn't see him. He didn't look too bad when he was, he gave his all to get to the ball when he did score, and I'm not criticising his effort, because I thought effort-wise he was brilliant. He was, he tried everything that he could, but for those two moments, I think that has cost us that game, which we did actually get ourselves back into. So yeah, I'll probably go over 5 with that one.
Yeah, and Danny, is it a little bit harsh to criticise Wyke for that, for the Lincoln goal? Obviously, he has lost his man, but that's not his job, really, is it? I know if you're in the box defending, you are expected to clear it, but he's not a defender at the end of the day, is he?
No, with Charlie, I see through the season he's come back in, do that 6-yard space is what you say. So he's not really got a man, but he heads a lot of balls out. As a centre forward, as Kemans used to do it in my time at the club. They come back, they're not picking anyone up. They're in the middle of the 6-yard box just to come back and head the ball, and he does that quite well. Charlie, throughout the season, he's done it well. Saturday, I'm not sure whether he was actually picking Hopper. I'll have to see it again, but he just gets under the flight, misreads the flight of the ball ever so slightly. It's not a bad ball in from George Grant. Good pace on it, and he's done for, and Tom Hopper's just off the back of him. So it is a disappointing goal, and he's played a big part in that, of course he has. And then the one for the goal, I think he's actually tried to do the defender, getting back on the line with the eyes. I think he knows Chris is there, and he thinks the defender's just got to take a little stuff. As you see, he puts his head down, he just tries to reverse it inside the near post, and defender reads it, doesn't he? Just puts his right leg there and gets the block on it. So massive chance, massive turning point in the game. And, it's a strange one for Charlie, because I know that the fans have got a divided opinion on him, where, as you say, well, hold on a minute, he scored 31 goals this season. Whatever level you play at, you can't knock that, and that's right. It isn't, but he is a limited striker in a way. He relies on service into the box. McGeady, prime example, got half of his goal contributions, I think. So other than that, outside the box. He's never going to pick the ball up and beat a man with a bit of skill, run past them from 30 yards. We know that, but he is what he is. And if you're giving him the service, he's done a pretty decent job this year. So whatever happens with Charlie now in terms of his contract, if he stays, if he moves on, we'll have to wait and see. But if he does go, then Lee Johnson's going to have to get one or two strikers in, a different type for me, more of a sharp little sort of striker, maybe to play a bit off Ross Stewart or Charlie if they're staying, somebody different to what we've got.
Yeah. And John, looking at the season as a whole, obviously Sunderland finished fourth, but for me, it stinks a lot of the first season we had in League One under Jack Ross in terms of the position that we did find ourselves in comparison to the position that we finished in. Obviously, I think it was 10 games left of the season. We had, I think it was a game in hand on Hull, or potentially 2 games in hand on Hull, who were top at the time, with 3 points behind them. And ultimately, that Charlton defeat, I think it's 2 wins we've had since then. And it's just all went downhill. And I suppose the only difference between this season and last season was we didn't concede in the last minute at Wembley.
Yeah, like you say, it's another flat finish. But ultimately, judging it as a whole, it just hasn't been good enough. I'd still question, I go a little bit higher and maybe question the manager and say, what is the plan? What is the philosophy? What are we trying to build? It's not like we can say, well, he's trying to play this way and we've just got to keep at it and maybe wait till the summer till we can get a few more components to fit into that system. We've tried this system, we tried that system, and we've tried this player, we've tried that. You know what I mean? We've dragged Chris Maguire back in, and then we've totally forgotten about Jordan Jones, and it's all just a little bit sort of mishmash. And I want to see the plan. There's obviously a plan from the owner and then Speakman. So what is the plan with the team going from that? And the season's proved, we went on a really good run. Was that him getting the absolute maximum out of them, and then we just, we ran out of steam, or were we lucky, or we've got too many players who name me a player who's had an amazing season. There probably isn't more than probably maybe 6, I would say, and you can't have that. You can't have that if you're going to win the league or if you're going to win the playoffs. You need, you sort of need 8 or 9 players absolutely firing on top form. Do you know what I mean? No, if any teams who come down or teams at the top are not going to come here and pick off our players, I don't think they will. Maybe Charlie White with his goal scoring, exploits might get that championship move, but the rest of them, obviously we might discuss the out contract ones, shortly, but I can't see anyone else coming in and sort of, taking any of our players off us based on what they've done for us this season or seasons gone by. Yeah, it's been a massive, okay, we're here again, and it has to change now.
Yeah. And Danny, it is easy to look at the season and think how close we were to automatic promotion. We were favourites to win the league at one point. Ultimately, we fell short. We lost in the semi-final of the playoffs. But you can't ignore the injuries, the illnesses, and just the players missing from the squad throughout the season. Obviously, Jamali, who I'd imagine a lot of fans have forgot about, he signed in the summer. He picked up a season-long injury. Jordan Willis, Bailey Wright, Denver Hume, Conor McLaughlin, Tom Flanagan, Leon Sanderson. There's been a lot of injuries, and it doesn't help when they're all in the same position either, does it? No,
that's right. Yeah, I think if you see it, it's disappointing the fact that we got so close, didn't we? It was only that Easter weekend, wasn't it? Where I think it was in our hands. We were 3 points off top, and then we went on that dreadful 7 or 8 game run without picking up a win. Three on the bounce defeats. And it went away from us in no time, didn't it? But then we got the second chance at it in terms of the playoffs, and obviously that's gone now. But yeah, if you look back throughout the season, it hasn't helped that centre half after centre half is rotation door on the treatment room, one in, one out, wasn't it? Throughout Jamajli early in the season, as you mentioned, Jordan Willis, Dion Sanderson comes in, he gets injured. He was part of our solid back 4 unit, wasn't he, alongside Luke O'Nien at centre half.
Yeah.
And then when you're playing 50% of your back line week in, week out as midfielders, you're up against it really. It's not ideal for Lee Johnson, I get that. And he can't get perhaps his preferred settled side out there week in, week out, and constantly having to make changes to try and adjust, to try and get Max Power back into midfield. And then next game, Conor McLaughlin comes back in. He picks up another injury, and then Max is back at right back. So it's frustrating for for the manager, I guess, in terms of what he wants to do and what he wants to go within his starting 11. But yeah, we'll have to move forward now, and hopefully these lads come back fit. Shamasley, if he's ready for the start of the season or not, we'll see what he's like. I think he only played one game, didn't he, in the Papa John's early on, so we haven't seen a lot of him. Jordan Willis, he's going to be out a while with his knee, I think. If we can try and get Dion Sanderson back, we'll have to see what happens with him. I think he'd be great if we could get him in. Perhaps Wolves maybe look to get him to a championship club next season. So there's a lot of it, ins and outs are obviously going to go on with contracts as well. But trying to get that back line sorted is going to be a major priority for next season as well.
Yeah, and John, it's very hard to pinpoint where things went wrong, but as we've mentioned, Sunderland were a very, very hard team to beat. Very few teams could even score past us when we were on that unbeaten run. And then I think it was the Peterborough game we drew, and then everything just went downhill from there. I think it was between now and then, I think we've won 2 in 15 against 11 men. Where did it go wrong so drastically?
I think it's tough to point out, a specific moment, or game type of thing. But I personally, for me, I think ultimately, I don't think the players are just consistent enough. The teams had to be chopped and changed a lot. I understand that. I don't think January was maybe the best window. We signed Ross Stewart and we're only just about now, end of May, seeing that, he's a decent enough player. He was injured for a few weeks, and Johnson was one saying, "Oh well, we're not going to sign players. We need to sign players who hit the ground running." We signed Winchester and then didn't really use him at all, and we didn't seem to address issues that were in the squad. We wasted positions like bringing Vokins in, sort of a complete waste of time really. But for me, it's inconsistency and maybe coupled with recruitment. And I don't think they adapted well to the the COVID outbreak at the club, and that thing has maybe had something to do with it. So you got to give maybe the benefit of the doubt because we're dealing in different times. But for me, it's the inconsistency of the players. You just don't get with Sunderland, you just don't get 9 or 8 or 9 players, like I was saying previously, who are just on top of their game every week. And again, as I say, no team going to come in and you sort of pluck our players away. I don't think based on their performances all season. It just hasn't been good enough on a consistent level.
Yeah. Well, Danny, looking at obviously the contracts at the end of the season, I've got them in front of me now. You've got Ledbetter, Scowen, McGeady, Power, and Jordan Jones obviously returning to Rangers on loan. Conor McLaughlin, Chris Maguire, Charlie White, Remy Matthews, Jake Vokins going back to Southampton, Jordan Willis, Luke O'Neill, Dion Sanderson back to Wolves, Lee Burge, Callum McFadzean and Denver Hume all out of contract in the summer. And I think I've seen it on Twitter that the retained list from Sunderland will come out at some point this week. So we'll kind of know more about it then. But whilst a lot of fans looking at the people out of contract and the fact that we've been in this season for 3 years now, this is going to be our 4th season in League One, and the core of them players have been there from day one and somewhat failed the club for 3 years now. At the same time that people will want a lot of them out, you've got to be careful not to replace the whole squad, because if you get rid of all them, you bring in, say, 11 new starting players, it's going to take them a while to gel, just like it did when these players first signed, isn't it?
Yeah, possibly will. Yeah, I think it's next day or two they'll assess it. They'll probably go in and have individual meetings with Lee Johnson. He'll let them know whether he's looking to keep them on or to let them go. But yeah, I'd certainly imagine there'll be a couple who will be looking to retain if they can try and fit into his system moving forward, his preferred system, how he wants to play. That'll all come into consideration. I think Jordan Willis has been given a year, has he not? I thought he'd been given a year. I'm not sure off that list.
I think he did, yeah. But honestly, I think his injury is now a year longer as well, isn't it?
So he's out anyway with his injury, isn't he, Jordan? So a miss for us, I think, Jordan. But no, massive window, one of the biggest windows for me in the club's recent times. I think trying to get it right now important. Stuart Harvey coming in, head of recruitment, working alongside Christian Speakman and Lee Johnson. Big discussions to be had for them, the type of player they're looking at. We've obviously spoke to them on the podcasts, aligning the data and stats on players they're looking to bring into the club. And obviously the scouting is big for me at this level. I know people will get excited because, the new chairman's come in with a lot of money behind him. But at this level, for me, it's mainly about the recruitment and being clever in terms of the type of player you bring in at League One level. There's some good players out there at League One, League Two level. You've got to recruit and try and pick the cream of the crop from those clubs. If we assess teams from this year, I've sat there myself recently and wrote some lads down who I think would be good additions for us to bring in, judging them off games played against ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's what they've got to do over these next few weeks. It's a massive window for us in this next sort of 5-6 weeks before pre-season. And yes, there are going to be a lot of new bodies coming in, whether it's 10, 12 new faces coming into the building. But it does work. Go back to my time when Roy had that window. He brought a lot of players in. Some of the Irish boys coming in there, and for us, we hit the ground running as a team, gelled quickly, and we fired on and got ourselves back up the top of the table. So it can work. And that's what's got to happen for this club. We're start of the season next year, we're expected to be right up amongst it at the top of the table. There's some tough teams going to be coming into it with Sheffield Wednesday coming into the league. Rotherham will be expected to be up there, I'd imagine. You'd expect Portsmouth. Ipswich should be better next year. Whoever misses out on the playoffs. So it's going to be tough. It's not a walk in the park. I get that we're a big club at this level, but you haven't got a divine right just to walk the table and the league, as we've seen over these last 3 years. So it's interesting, and I'm looking forward to it moving on.
Yeah. And John, the recruitment over the last 3 seasons is arguably the reason why we still find ourselves in this league. Obviously, if you go back to the first season, if you keep that core place, we probably go up in the first season. Josh Madger, if he didn't leave, potentially we're in the Championship now. Obviously, you can't predict what would have happened if we did go up. But we saw Josh Madger, replaced him with Grigg, who at the time, looked like a good signing on paper, but it didn't really fit the system that Ross wanted to play. Obviously, you look on the documentary that Netflix posted, Ross kind of turned away from wanting to sign him when he heard the price. Stuart Donald went ahead and signed him anyway. We've got Danny Graham last season, who just had no impact whatsoever. What has the recruitment got to be this season? Because I know I said on Twitter before, I think as Sunderland have signed too many players who either coming towards the end of the career or who know just won't play at a higher level. They have no hunger to play at a higher level. And I think that's the one thing that we do need to focus on.
Yeah, I think for me, I think we need to be looking at players who have, when they come in, they've got the stats to back it up. And we're not talking about, they scored 10 goals in the Premier League, because we know we're not going to attract those types of players. I think it has to be, a mixture of maybe, a Jordan's Jones type loan, one or two of them. But for me in League One, we can look at the statistics and say, Scott Fraser's got how many assists for MK Dons. That's the sort of player we could be looking at, who's playing week in, week out, and has the stats to back it up. We sign Will Grigg. He doesn't really play at Wigan. Max Power, he wasn't really playing at Wigan. Those types of players. We, for years now, this club has just not gone on. I know that on Danny's, official podcast with the club, they're saying, we've got the data analysts in now, and we can look at the stats. And, I think it's the stats that we need to look at. Obviously, when Charlie White came in, his stats weren't exactly, great, for a striker. Those are the things we need to be looking at. Someone who's done it, someone who's on form. And when they come to this club, they'll relish playing for the club and do what they've been doing, obviously, previously for their club. If you see what I mean. And like I say, it doesn't have to be the Premier League guys. It can be someone, whoever the top goal scorer in League Two is, or whoever the top assist. If that fits our system and they've got the stats to back it up, which I think you need, those are the types of players that we've got to be going for. We've got to be going as well for a big leader. I think we massively need a fresh leadership change within the squad. I don't, obviously Danny will see more of Max Power than I do, on a day-to-day, on a match day, sorry. But for me, he's just not the inspiring leader maybe that I want. I want that big, brash centre midfield type guy who's going to absolutely rally, them and us. Those types of things. But, like I say, going back to the stats, we need people who have done it and who are doing it and who are on form, not someone who's going to take 6 weeks to get up to speed, because they're not playing, they're not favoured. We need players to come in, hit the ground running, relish playing for this club, and see themselves as well wanting to progress. maybe a player, sort of Luke 09, his attitude type thing comes in. He wants to play in the Premier League. Callum McFadden's a player who's coming. He's not going to, he probably does aspire to play in the Premier League, but he's never going to get there. We need the types of mentality that Luke 09 has to come in, to work hard, has got the stats behind him, and then wants to progress with us, further forward. And those are the types of things we need. The only thing I'll give, the club a little bit of leeway on is, not leeway because it's been poor from, Stuart and Charlie, is the correct structure behind the scenes just hasn't been there. It's been Tony Goten maybe sort of phoning around and, I can get Kaiser Sterling from Tottenham, who didn't really do anything for us. That's been our sort of transfer strategy. Whereas now it's, we've got analysts, we've got the scouts, we've got the head of recruitment, we've got the head of football, and just look at the under 23s. That's there's a massive rebuild going on there, and look how well we're doing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are the types of things that we need to put in place with the first team now, and hopefully, like we say, that's going to happen.
Yeah, and Danny, I know a lot of people, when they talk about recruitment, they are keen on bringing loans in from the Championship, from the Premier League, players who aren't necessarily playing as much for the parent club or potentially as much as they'd like. But you've kind of got to be careful with loans at the same point, don't you? Because if you look at Jordan Jones, he's came in. Yes, he's made an impact, but he just wasn't playing at Rangers. He's had a lot of time out of football, and it took him a while to get back into playing. And at the same point, the one thing that I've always not necessarily liked about loans is whether we get promoted or not, it doesn't really have an impact on them, does it?
I'm not sure if I personally look at it like that. I think wherever you go and you're looking to further your career, and if you're out of favour at your parent club, then you're looking to look after yourself in terms of a contract elsewhere. For instance, if lads aren't playing at their club, come down here, put in a good shift, and they do well, and then that gives them a chance maybe to get a contract at Sunderland. So, yeah, that's the way I perhaps look at loans. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't always work like that. Some people might come here and they're not playing as much as they'd like, and then they feel, well, I'm only on loan anyway, so yes, I am going to go back to my parent club at the end of my loan spell. But I think looking at in terms of getting bodies into the building, for me now, I've not been a manager, but what I would personally like to do if I was in charge of a club, I think try and get my squad sorted as soon as possible, get them all together so you know what you're dealing with pre-season. Know that they're buying into the way you want to play, what your preferred formation is. So you're going into the pre-season games ready, working on shapes and everything. Whereas if you've got 3 or 4 lads in, and then a few weeks later you're getting more lads come in, do you know what I mean? So it slows the process down for me of being prepared and ready for that first game of the season at the start of August.
Yeah.
Do you know as well, touching on the loans, obviously we're saying about what type of players we get. You could look at Chalker G's, how we've got now. We've got Jordan Jones, who seems more interested in, talking to the Rangers fan base on social media and stuff, as opposed to concentrating on his football. And, he, with his ability, it should be a starter for Sunderland every week, let's be honest, with his quality. But maybe we haven't had that as committed as we've seen. On the other hand, we've got Dion Sanderson, who tell me hasn't relished being here. He seems like he absolutely loved it. And I'm sure if we did get promoted, I'm sure we were well in with a chance, of maybe even getting him permanently. It's still all about recruitment. Is he the right person we need? And you'd say Sanderson is, maybe not so much Jordan Jones. I mean, it's all about recruitment and doing your research.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, say with Dion as well. I think he had to bide his time, didn't he? He would have been frustrated. He came from Wolves. He got a taste of it last year, going out on loan to Cardiff and getting some games there in the Championship. So perhaps he would have thought, I'll come to Sunderland. Oh, they're in League One. I'm going to start straight away. He didn't get into the team, and it was by default really that he actually got into the side, wasn't it? When Jordan Willis got injured at Shrewsbury, came into the team, and then from there on in, he looked like a seasoned centre half. Really, just the way he read the game. He's good in the air. He's got a turn of pace, everything that you want in a centre half. For someone who's 21-year-old and hasn't got a lot of playing experience, but the attitude he showed in terms of having to wait his turn to get some game time. And then he took his chance for me, and it was just disappointing that he got injured at the time he did. And then, the running results after that showed, I think. But yeah, it's not just about the player's ability. I think it's knowing the character, trying to get to know the character. I think Lee Johnson, if he's looking to bring somebody in, he will try and tap into people who know that player to find out what type of character they are and if they're suited to coming and playing for this club.
Yeah. Well, there is two more things that we will talk about. The second one will not take long. But the next thing that I want to talk about is something that's been mentioned a lot on Twitter. There's obviously that video going around from after the game on Saturday as well, with fans gathering outside the entrance or the exit, I suppose. Talking to Lee Johnson, I say talking to Lee Johnson, it wasn't necessarily the friendliest of chats ever, but there's a lot of talk, John, whether Johnson should stay, whether he should go, whether it should be a completely fresh start. And when he came in, obviously he did make a big impact with the resources he had. Obviously, there is still the argument that a lot of these players are Phil Parkinson's players, but no one really said that when we were on a good run. You know, it was all, wow, look what Lee Johnson's done with his team. But then we go on the bad run, and it's kind of back to, well, it's Phil Parkinson's players. You can't blame Lee Johnson at all. And I'm not saying the reason that we haven't went up is entirely down to Lee Johnson, because it's not. But at the same point, he has to come in for a fair bit of criticism for, you know, the last 12, 13 games, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he does. Certainly questions to be answered, and I'm sure those questions are being asked, you know, over the next day or two, you know, with the club and the hierarchy. Personally, for me, I'm probably a little bit on the fence with him. I think he does deserve a chance. You know, with the process we've got in place, and you know what can we do in the market, and you know, is it going to suit everybody? On the other hand, as the owner got, you know, other ideas, and as he got, you know, if Johnson did go, you know, who would we get? There's that type of thing. You know, if he's going to get in someone better, then you know we maybe could take the plunge. But I think maybe because of the player turnover, I think he just about is gonna stay. I think, and maybe he does deserve a chance. Obviously I've seen the video, and you know, I don't know why we give it the time of day. Really, it's just a few, you know, idiots sort of waiting to berate him a little bit. Whereas, you know, in fairness, he could have waited till everyone's gone home, because everyone would have just gone home, but he didn't. You know, he chose to go out there, and you know, it's just a few people just giving it big, and he'll know in his heart of hearts that, you know, he probably isn't as devastated as we are, because we're fans, but you know, I'm sure he is devastated, you know, and I'm sure that drive and that fire, you know, that hope he's got for this club is the starting point of the massive rebuild that we need. But I think a manager change at the moment is maybe just a little bit too much upheaval with the amount of players we've got, you know, who look like they're on their way out.
Yeah. And Danny, one of the things that obviously when Lee Johnson came, we did speak to Bristol City fans about, you know, his philosophy, what he brings to the team. And one thing that was mentioned a lot was the nickname that he got at Bristol City, which was Streaky Lee. And he had a tendency at Bristol City and the other clubs that he's managed to go on a very good run and then follow that very good run with a very poor run. And that is what he's done this season. Again, you've got to take into the injuries, the COVID that we had, the COVID breakout at the academy. I think there was 8 or 9 players missing for 2 or 3 games then. So you've got to take that into account as well. But ultimately, he's kind of lived up to that reputation a little bit. We went on I think it was a 14-game unbeaten run, winning games comfortably, keeping clean sheets, you know, nullifying any attack really from the opposition, to then shipping goals from mistakes, some strange tactical decisions, some strange substitutions. Do you think his reputation at other clubs will kind of be on the mind of the board as well?
Possibly. I know what the fans have said the last few days, and I think you can look at it from both sides, to be honest with you. I think you can say, yes, he came in, he took over us, 15 games or so into the season, so he's had 30 plus games, knew what the task was, what was expected really was to get Sunderland certainly up into the playoffs. We were 7th, I think, when he took over. So we could argue that, yeah, well, we finished 4th, we got into the playoffs, but when we came so close, you know, we were up to 3rd, weren't we? And it was in our hands, and then we fell away. That's the disappointing thing. I think maybe sometimes people can throw it a little bit too much at the manager. You've got to question the players a little bit more for me as well. You know, we did go on that unbeaten run, but I don't think there was a lot of difference for me. I mean, I'm at every game, and I don't think there was a lot of difference in the way we played over the course of 90 minutes when we were winning games to when we lost games. You know, we were scratching our way through. Accrington, Stanley away. There was other games at home where we were edging games out and just coming out on the right side of results. Then we even lost at Charlton at home. You know, we could have been 3-0 up in the first half an hour in that game. Didn't take our chances. That one goes against us. And from there on in, we started giving daft goals away, conceding goals, individual errors leading to goals, Blackpool away. These things which are out of the manager's hands, really. Yes, there maybe are substitutions and formations will always be questioned by fans. I get that. It's always a talking point after the game in pubs between fans. Why didn't he start with this player? Why didn't we start with this formation? So all these things come into play. I get that, but I just think, he took over a group of players which weren't his, which Phil Parkinson was struggling to get a tune out of really towards the end of his time. I thought we were on a downward slope. So he has come in, he has rallied them through the middle of the season, towards the end of the season. But I do think you've got to give him a fresh start, see what he can do in this transfer window, see what players come in, and let's go from there. And then maybe, yes, into next season, if we don't get off to a good start, if we're not up and amongst it after the first, 5 to 10 games, then of course questions are certainly going to be asked then.
Yeah. And John, if Johnson was to go, obviously the question is, who would he get in? Going back to the Championship, we've had 5 managers since then. Obviously, we've had Simon Grayson, didn't work. Coleman didn't necessarily work. He got sacked when the new ownership came in. Would he have worked? I don't know, in League One. Jack Ross got so close again, then fell off, didn't work out. Phil Parkinson didn't work. And then Lee Johnson, we fell short this season. Will it work in the future? I don't know. But the question is, again, we've said this a lot of times as a Sunderland fan, League One, Championship, Premier League, it's always the same thing. If you do sack the manager, who do you bring in? Because, Lee Johnson came in, reputation of a Championship manager, a good manager. People would question whether Roy Keane would come back. And, he hasn't been in management for a long time. But just who do you even try and get in if you do get rid of Lee Johnson at this point?
That's what I mean. I wouldn't have a clue. Like you said, the easy links are, the Roy Keane to, maybe that's more of a lift the place, and maybe the standards have dropped, in the squad. We know that would, send a rocket up of most of their backsides. Most of them probably wouldn't even be here if Roy Keane was manager. You got the obvious one of, Gus Poyet. Would he want to come though? You never know. Would we want to go back to that? We know his philosophy is playing good football, so it wouldn't be the worst shout in the world. But I honestly don't know where. I don't know where we maybe would turn. Maybe a Championship manager who we could maybe attract. I think that might be a little bit, big-headed. Maybe, if someone was to leave a Championship side and maybe come to us. There's maybe the other one. Is it Stendhal who used to manage Barnsley? Yeah, maybe him. So I'm genuinely not sure. It's obviously whatever, the club, whatever way they want to go down. Obviously, we're going to a new era of, data and all that type of thing. I'm maybe not sure Roy Keane is maybe the manager for that. Maybe Poyet, but personally, I can't see Johnson going. I think he's just about earned his chance. Don't get me wrong, he does deserve a bit of criticism. But we'll wait and see what the decision is in the next couple of days. But I don't think he's going anywhere though.
Yeah. And Danny, say Lee Johnson does stay. A lot of fans say, give him to December, see what happens then. If we're not performing then you get rid of him. But again, then you're at the risk of just recycling every season. A new manager comes in December, he doesn't get us promoted, then you've got the excuse of, well, they're not his players, Lee Johnson's players. You do it again, you keep rinsing and repeating. If you stick with a manager, how long do you think you've got to stick with them?
Well, I think what you mentioned there as well, the fact that now, obviously, Lee Johnson is seen as the head coach working alongside Christian Speakman in terms of the recruitment and Stuart Harvey as well. So they've obviously got the plan or the philosophy in mind of the type of football they want to play. So if they are recruiting those players into the building, and then if it doesn't work out for Lee Johnson at the start of next season and he does go, then the new manager who comes in, they will perhaps be looking at the type of manager they want to come in to fit into that style of play as well. So, for instance, if you want to play free-flowing football, you want to get a manager in who is suited to that. And if they want a centre-half split in, receiving the ball off the keeper and all that playing out from the back, then you're not going to go for an old-school manager who just wants to go 4-4-2 and shell it up to the two big men and play in the opposition's half. So I think that will come into play as well. But yeah, again, football, and decisions are determined obviously by results. It's a results business, and if we are expected at the start of next season to be up amongst it, of course we are. With what's gone on off field, with the new chairman coming in, if we get off to a bad start and we're mid-table after say 10, 12 games, then yeah, there will obviously be calls for Lee Johnson to go, and there'll be massive pressure on him. Of course there will. So we'll have to see how that pans out. big summer, get these players in, and hopefully we get off to a good start at the start of next season and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will finish with somewhat of a positive note, and 3 things that I will talk about. Obviously, throughout the season, there has been a lot of good goals from Sunderland's point of view. Obviously, you've got the granddad bit one against Doncaster. You've got that away game against Crewe with Jordan Jones scoring and then Chris Maguire getting the equaliser. But, John, I'll start with you. If you had to pinpoint one goal as the goal of the season, which one would you pick?
I'm definitely going for Chris Maguire, equaliser against Crewe. Quality finish. It's a shame we didn't see that. On a more regular basis. But yeah, absolutely quality finish. And yeah, he's done. I think he's done Ledbetter and Jones there.
Yes. Danny, for you?
Yeah, tough one really. Both different goals in a way, because obviously Chris Maguire's has sat up nice. The importance of the game really. He won it last minute of the game to get us the point away at Crewe. Strikes it well, sweet across the goalie, flies in the top corner. Grant is perhaps for me a little bit more of a difficult technique, the way it's set across to him, and to catch the ball as sweet as he did, and to keep over the top of it. How many times this season have we seen balls flying well over the crossbar? And we know Grant can strike a ball. We've seen it earlier on in his career when he was at Sunderland. I think you go back to his goal against Arsenal when I was playing that one. But I think the way he struck that for me, caught it sweet. You don't see too many balls caught sweeter than that one. Really flies in the top corner. And Jordan Jones as well coming in. He affected the game coming off that left hand side, and that one was it's difficult to pull them apart really for me. So I'm going to sit on the fence and put them all on the same level, and I'm not going to select one of them really.
Smart way of doing it. Next one, there's been some standout performances throughout the season on a consistent basis. Obviously, I think Charlie White got the Player of the Year from the fans in general. Obviously, 31 goals, which is the highest goal scoring record since Kevin Phillips. And again, not comparing it to Kevin Phillips, because I know a few people got on me for saying that last time. But Ian McGeady, he's came in after Phil Parkinson went. He's made a huge impact. Luke O'Neill at centre half, he's done his job. Dion Sanderson. There's a lot of players that have definitely had a good season. But again, John, who are you picking as the best this season?
I'll probably have to go McGeady. His stats for sort of half a season is unreal. Imagine what he'd have done if we'd have had him all season. I'm not saying we'd have won the league by 1,000,000 points, but just his quality, and like Danny was saying earlier, he still looks sharp, he looks fit, and looks like he's enjoying his football. So yeah, I'd probably have to go with McGeady.
Yeah, and like I said, Danny, it is hard to pick one, because whilst Aidan McGeady, Charlie White have had such a huge influence going forward, again, Dion Sanderson at the back, without him, you ship a lot more goals. God knows where you finish where you don't have him. So it is hard to pick one, considering they are different types of players, but there's a few you could select, isn't there?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with John. I'd go Aidan. I think you can't take anything away from Charlie White with getting the amount of goals what he has, but I don't think he scores obviously half of them if Aidan doesn't come back into the team. And I do believe it's harder to create goals than it is to score them. People will argue, well, you've got to be on the end of them. Of course you have, but you just look at the way Aidan has created the goals. Having to beat his man time and time again, and the quality of delivery he's put into the box. And from where he came as well, being out in the cold for over a year, to coming back in, to hitting the ground running, and to almost catapulting us on really, and to playing a massive part and contributing us to getting back up into contention for automatics, and then obviously into the playoffs. And I'd obviously go for Dion as Young Player of the Year as well. As we mentioned earlier, I had to wait and bide his time to get into the team, and when he did, took his chance, and he looks a good, solid centre half for me with a good future ahead of him.
Yeah. And moving on to the last one. Depends what your reasoning would be for this one, but obviously game of the season. There's been some good games, some poor games. Obviously going back to the Lincoln game in the league, the 4-0 win away from home, definitely one of the best performances of the season. But at the same point, I think some people would probably say Saturday's game, purely for the occasion. The first time fans have been in the stadium for, I think it's 14 or 15 months. And whilst we won the game, obviously it didn't actually count for anything. But John, if you had to pick a game of the season?
Personally, for me, I'd probably do the even though it was a turgid game, the win at Wembley. It's a shame, obviously, we weren't all there to see it all, but it was, I think it was a really good day. And it was nice to see. Obviously, we only saw it through sort of social media. all the celebrations in the change rooms and at the end, and just getting over that hoodoo, regardless it's the pizza cup or whatever. It was still nice. It was one shining light in maybe a bad season.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what name it has next season.
Yeah,
come from the Checker. I'm trying to think what names it had. Checkertrade
and leasing.com.
Leasing.com. And had some names before. Like, what was it known as before?
Oh God,
Johnson Paints, was it?
Johnson
Paints.
Paints.
That's it.
Yeah. That's one thing to look forward to, I suppose, isn't it? Renaming of the pizza cup. But damn you, you've had to pick a game of the season.
Yeah. I think I know John's mentioned there, but yes, in terms of an occasion, wasn't it? Getting the Wembley hoodoo, as everyone calls it, out of the way. But the performance wasn't great for me in the final, but we got the job done. But if you're asking for a 90-minute performance throughout the season, I'd look at Portsmouth. You could argue, yes, Portsmouth at the time weren't in great form. I think Kenny Jackett was sacked just after, was he? But
yeah,
from start to finish in that game, I thought we looked a threat on the break. We had energy in midfield. We looked organised at the back. It was just a complete performance for me. And Lincoln away would be second. Taking that first 5-10 minutes out of the game where we should have perhaps been 1 or 2-0 down. After that, the way we hit them on the counter attack as well, took the goals, and that sort of spurred us on. Really, I think that was Lee Johnson's first away game win to kick us on from there. Really, so they're perhaps the two standout performances for me. And going in at bronze position, I'd probably mention the Crewe game. The fact that we were dreadful on the day, 2-0 down going into stoppage time, and the two wonder goals which got us a point there.
Yeah, definitely goals to remember. And I can't remember the last time we've actually played in a game where you've had 2 goals that good in the same game. Trying to think back to any game, really. The Chelsea game, potentially.
The 3-2 win at home.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's been some good games. But that is it.
What's your absolute dire moment of the season? It's got to be Max Powell yesterday, 92nd minute. Get the ball out wide to cross it and absolutely shanks it out to whatever row in the stadium.
Yeah, it was.
That summed it all up.
It was an interesting decision, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To say the least. Well, that is it. That is the season done with. Another season in League One does follow us. Hopefully our last, although we have said that a few times now, so we will wait and see. But there's a lot that happened between now and the start of the season. A lot of recruitment, a lot of players leaving, the new kit, which I know a lot of people look forward to, whether new sponsors and all that nonsense. But that is it for the season, really. Between now and then, obviously, we will get as many podcasts done as we can. There's a few people back from our Premier League days, which we will be doing podcasts with in the near future. But that is it for the season, and I appreciate you both coming on, John and Danny.
Okay, mate, no problem.
Thanks for having me.
Right.
No worries. But like I say, we will be back with some sort of podcast, potentially a quiz, an interview, who knows. But until then, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.